figured that you would ask about that. The legislature this year, this issue has been around for quite a while, and the legislature, at least support built in the legislature for legislation that would allow persons to carry concealed handguns if they have a license on campus in campus buildings. Let me remind you that the law already was, as early as the 1994 or 5 concealed handgun license law passed, that you could carry a concealed handgun if you had a license on campus. You just couldn't take it into the buildings. So this legislation, which is basically been around for about 5 or 6 sessions, finally passed this session, and it was an interesting debate. You had the University of Texas system said, no way, we don't want it. You had Texas A&M saying, we don't care, basically. And then the rest of us were looking at it and saying, look, this is probably going to pass. And if it passes, we want to have a seat at the table in that debate. And so a lot of us took the position that we're neutral. If the legislature decides to do this, we would like to have a seat at the table to discuss it. And more importantly, we need the flexibility on the campuses to be able to accommodate different issues that each of us have that may be unique and something that you just can't do in a one-size-fits-all piece of legislation. We were particularly concerned about laboratories. In particular, we didn't want to lose our competitive edge on competing for national research, for federal research and other corporate research there who may have restrictions with regard to security issues and concealed handguns. It might be inconsistent with their security requirements. At the end of the day, the legislature listened, and I want to thank our delegation was very key in Senator Perry and Representative Frulo in particular in helping us get a bill that finally passed that has that flexibility. And so the bill that passed allows for the university presidents to define areas where, and create rules, and define areas where carrying a handgun would be restricted on campus. And if you look around this campus, just drive around, you can see that we do family counseling here. We have the Center for Study of Addiction and Recovery. We have clinics that are located in our hospitals. We have courtrooms at the law school. We have a child care center right across the street here. And so there are locations that we have that we need to be able to restrict in those types of areas. And so the system will work with the presidents of each of our component institutions to come up with standards and guidelines for reasonable rules and regulations on where you can and cannot. I think the legislature made it clear that they don't want us to go in and do blanket sorts of prohibitions, and I think that we'll work very hard with our presidents to make sure that our rules and regulations are in compliance with the law and the intent of the law. I think that it's this way. It's like a lot of things. There's a lot of concern about this. And I think generally higher ed, even in spite of what I just said earlier about some being for it, some against it, generally higher education faculty and administrators oppose this type of legislation. But if we're going to have it, I think that the legislature, in listening to the concerns that higher ed had, I think in providing this flexibility, this is about as good as it can get, because it does allow us to take care of the unique things. And I'll remind you that only licensed persons who have been cleared to have a concealed handgun license will be allowed to do this. And that also includes being over 21. So I'm trying to express that it's probably not as bad as everybody has fears of it being. And if you look at the records of CHL holders in the state of Texas, you'll find that, especially as it relates to gun-related crimes, very few there have been very few incidents involving that in the 850,000 people that have licenses. If you look at, it's also probably not as good as the proponents think it is. I mean, I don't think it's not the type of legislation that is game changer for anything. And I think if we do the rules right, I think that we can make this work, and we're committed to do that.